How are we feeling? Good? We'll catch you right before the food coma settles in.
It kicked in.
It's already in it?
Yeah.
All right.
I'm on top.
Thank God we got 2 hours plus until we get you. We have salt and sugar and all kinds of good stuff for our afternoon break when you need that fixed. All right, so fantastic. We've got a couple of folks who had to catch flights back, but this is why we're recording it and sharing slides for everybody to take. So here's what the rest of the day looks like together. We've crunched 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there. We've left plenty of time, and if Adobe needs to go longer because the Q&A in the back of the fourth is that good, like it was as expected earlier, then we'll let them go, and we'll maybe get them started earlier. And then we're going to do these breakout sessions that we'll see how they go. Again, you know, we kind of already been doing that, I think, a little bit during the breaks out back and talking about each other's lives, but we'll formalize that, and you know, we'll do kind of the classic offsite thing you do when you go back into teams and take a topic that suits you and then come on back, and we'll share without breaking confidentiality or embarrassing people about what we learned or where we have challenges or whatever around different subtopics of CDPs. We'll see how that goes. We'll get a little wonkier again talking about the future, and then we'll bring our friend Angelina up. Cool? All right. That's the heater, right? Okay. We're going to call that background music on kettle drums now. Okay, cool. All right, so, hey, Glenn, would you mind asking? Or something, thanks. Yeah, I don't know if that's something we couldn't do on our own. Sounds like it's coming from that vent, so I hope we can control it. Thanks. All right. So, here's a story. So, talking about the publisher opportunities with CDPs. I was 7 days on the job as head of programmatic at the New York Times in April of 2013. Thrilled to death to be able to bring the best of what I thought was kind of the future here of publishing, and not just ad sales, but marketing, and with one of the world's greatest brands ever. Got to meet Mark Thompson, the CEO, who'd been there 3 months, I think, on the job. Scheduled 30 minutes one-on-one with me. And I realized after question 2, the agenda was, what the hell did we hire you for? Suddenly, very politely. When it was kind of him asking very basic questions, sort of, and so this means for us kind of thing. So it was a Programmatic 101 opportunity in his office, which was pretty cool. So I took, not this, but he had one of those old school easels in his office with pens and the whole deal. And I said, okay, so I'm drawing. And I said, all right, so this is the business and finance section of the New York Times today. And today, and so here's what that looked like back then. And here's a 300 by 250 that we have. And here's your editorial, and I'm drawing lines and all this other stuff. And here's where we sell umbrellas or crossword puzzles, and here's where I said, but really there are 4 different things we could put in that box today. Right now we put a paid ad every single time. It's always a paid ad, and it's always in that section. And it's no matter what, whoever has the highest CPM goes in that. And that's the decision we've made. We could also, though, rotate in our 4 weeks for 99-cent promotional subscription offer. This was pre-2016 when New York Times made a strategic move and, let's say, got a little bit of a Trump bump in their subscription businesses. It's helped their overall digital revenue complement their not so much increasing ad revenue, fortunately for them. We could sell stuff out of our store, crossword puzzles, whatever, or we can actually put editorial in. But instead, what do? Just like NASDAQ, just like every other publisher that you go to, you know where the ads are, you know where the edit is, and it's all pixeled off. So each department at the publisher, you get this, and hey, marketing, you get this. Either marketing always gets this, or there's a rotation and a policy so that they either get 10% of the inventory constantly, or if the eCPM is below a certain amount, great, kick the house, whatever, right? We've all either been in those places or known or worked with publishers who have that setup, and you kind of know what to do. And when does that change? It changes when there are annual meetings, when there are redesigns every 1 to 12 years, when there's a quarterly goal pressure, good or bad, where one department needs help and you horse trade, blah, blah, blah. That's how it usually works at most publishers. And I'm saying, Mark, this is kind of how it works here. I've seen, and you've seen a little bit, right? Yeah. So, well, what if we just erased all that and started with a clean page and thought about the person going into the New York Times at that moment, whether they're coming in through the side door of social, where they're coming into the homepage old school, where they're coming off a search, whether they're referred from email, linked from a friend, whatever. But actually knew what that person had done prior to arriving on that page, what that person had done at our properties historically, everywhere, and then predict out what they're likely to do next and build the page in 150 milliseconds. So this was coming up on 7 years ago. And he said, can we do that? And I said, it would be really hard right now. We have this, there's this thing called the DMP that we can get that can maybe get us there. But yeah, the pieces are in place and it's just a matter of us getting organizationally set up to do that. And then the meeting ended. It was like, all right, well, that was good. Yeah, go try to do that. Okay, thanks. Kind of like, day 7 and, then go run around. But we turned that into, being the first publisher to have our own DSP. No publisher had ever gotten a DSP. We vetted 14 of them, not just to build our audience extension product, but I was running down the hall to the marketing team, getting subscriptions saying, hey, let's use the same platform. Because it would be cool if we knew how the same audience reacted to paid ads as they do to your subscription offer or to your house ads or whatever. We should probably have that data in one place. Things that the CDP now can obviously help with, but we didn't even have that acronym at the time. So, the vision is still there. There are still, most of our publishers are siloed off, if not all. But it could, obviously, the New York Times has some exceptions, CNN, NASDAQ. I mean, you're going to put certain things that as an editor, as a journalist, former journalist, you're going to want to tell everyone about that you think obviously is important. All the news is fit to print, right? But for everything else, I mean, the easy math example for us back then, not really breaking confidentiality 7 years later, but our average display ad in the open auction, the average in the industry at the time was $1.10 US. Ours was $3.50, and which sounds nice compared to the industry average. But our cooking video pre-roll, $75 a thousand, sold out all year. Couldn't make enough of it. So the math was kind of easy to show them. Hey, Mark, instead of putting an ad and getting $3.50, why not? If we know that it's my wife who will watch every cooking video under the sun, and it's wonderful, and we know that, put the promotion for the cooking video on there and take the money later, because you can do the click-through rate to know exactly how to get from the 350 to the 75. It's pretty easy, right? So basic stuff like that. No one's doing that. Still, most are not doing that. So you start thinking about lifetime value of your audience, and this is where some light bulbs start to go on, either as editors or ad sales heads or marketing heads or audience development heads, which are kind of a hybrid of those, and publishers and presidents and CFOs start to go, oh, okay, I get it. Maybe that's how we can rebuild, in a lot of cases, our audiences. So these are the challenges. A lot of these we repeated, but we don't need to wax poetic here with 5 minutes left in this whole section to talk about the publisher challenges. We use a 4 horsemen of the apocalypse reference all the time. If you take a look at a walled garden issue, you look at identity issue, you look at attribution and measurement issue, and then throw in ad blocking just for fun. It's tough to be a publisher today. But again, there are some solutions, and again, you're going to hear from our friends with some thoughts and some practice on that as well. This is one example. Amit and Paul and a couple others on our team have been fortunate to be helping the entertainment property Vivo for the past 18 months, helping build with our development partners at Aquifer, a custom CDP for a publisher. If you know Vivo, owned by music labels, music videos. Remember when MTV had music videos? Come on, we're all somewhat old. You remember? Even Mike remembers, right? He's a young guy. So, yeah, so Vivo has that obviously, and YouTube, kind of an important channel for them, right? But tough to get out of, all due respect, tough to get some of the inventory and yield out of the black box there. Even though they have a significant sales force where they co-sell that data with Google now. So this is a platform we built called Melody. It's a cool acronym. We'll tell you about it later if you want. But what we built as a way to kind of crack the code a little bit on inventory and yield and pricing. I mean, this doesn't even get into the earned and owned aspects of using a CDP. This, though, does take a look at audience segments and thinking about first-party data and how people are coming in a beyond demo way. Yes, McKenna. What's that?
Your PowerPoint is not.
It isn't? Thank you, McKenna. Sorry, Zoom folks. Looked like it was. We're going to try to duplicate now. Hopefully that worked. Text McKenna, guys, if we screwed up or hit me again. Apologies. So these are some of the attributes and features that we built out for them. Being able to add in appropriate third-party data because a lot of people still buy them like video, like TV on Nielsen-based demos. And so how do you bring, it's kind of symbolic of where the television buying and selling community is today. You have a group of folks that all used to report to Steve Groves, who have been buying on demo for 25, 30 years and getting metered or panel-based answers to approximate in commercial and in program. And then you have what we've seen from Adobe, kind of let's call it the other end of the spectrum in terms of deterministic, unique. I mean, we could spend, well, we've spent 2 hours before talking to cable companies about the walled gardens of MVPDs and the box data that's sitting there. That's going to be the next one, probably later this year when we get through the upfronts and the new fronts, as long as they're still around, to see how those folks are going to be unlocking that critical data. That is deterministic, that is in our home, that should be able to help make addressable TV sing a lot better. But anyway, this is one example of how it can be used. No? Really? All right, so fortunately we have slides. Is Kurt on? Yeah. Sorry guys, we're gonna take one more take for our friends here on Zoom all around. We're recording. Now I know why. Yep. Sorry again, everybody. You've only missed 2 slides. So hopefully you can match my yapping. As we say in TV production, we'll fix it in post. Okay. So that's one use case of where a publisher can get some help here. There are very few that exist. Because again, most publishers are head down in other areas, and this just feels way too out there, or for buyers, or I still got to figure out how to get my ad blocking down to 30%, or didn't Google just do something with cookies that someone came running down the hall about on Tuesday to tell me? I don't even know what we're supposed to do about that yet. So, priorities, right? But anyway, this is how publishers like NASDAQ and others can get in front of this. So here are the 5 stages of using it as a publisher. Guess what? They're the exact same 5, intentionally, that you saw earlier. So this not only is going to save us time, but it's going to be intentionally consistent. And a lot of the words are going to be the same here, except we're going to change things from customers to readership. And we're going to change things from, shoppers to subscribers. But the analogy is exactly the same. The people that are still needing to deploy specific targeting across social media to be able to still use that crack that they are so dependent on for their audience every single day and be able to do that better and promote their stories better, whether they're in a rev share with Facebook and others or not, or with LinkedIn and B2B or not, their email. Aaron and Paul were talking about the hidden value of email. How many know a good company called Live Intent downtown here in New York? Friends of the show, good people. completely under the radar on a macro basis. They've been hashing emails and doing a pretty good job for a while, and they're in this weird space because they're in one channel primarily that's been forgotten about by the top traditional SSPs. And they're too big in certain areas, so they're in this weird middle space. We think, and we're not biased or teasing anything intentional that we know, but we've just talked to them and worked with them a few times, that they're going to probably have a revival because we think email as an identity hook is going to be important down the road. So all the same challenges: marketing, editorial, we threw in, and sales. Same issues. Chief data officer definitely needed at a publisher as well. Yes, sir.
Is data based on user behavior, like whether it's related on your site or let's say ended on a certain section?
Yeah.
Is that considered like first party data that being ingested by the CDP?
Yeah.
Strictly
Yeah.
data?
So you'd probably want to talk to someone who comes in through the side door and looks at just one data point on NASDAQ at 8:50, 8 in the morning Eastern, and leaves. You'd probably want to talk to that person differently than the person that you know is going deep dive in 42 minutes and all the things you tell your advertisers about, right? Through an IO. And that's why you should buy everywhere. But to be able to talk to those two people differently. Here was one example that we did at the Times with Paul's Netflix example where we helped them. We helped change the creative. We said to Netflix, hey, wouldn't you want to, hey, we have people who pay for our content on a subscription basis. You are trying, this is in 2013. You are trying to get many more people to pay for your content on a subscription basis. Why don't we set specific creative to people that are just our subscribers that go through our site and pay for us, and do something else with everyone else? Maybe making a call that more likely for folks to add a second service because they're already in that behavior, that 5X ROI. So yeah, those are perfect examples of how you can use this for you guys. Yep. So same design. We threw in the MVPDs as a key piece if you're a TV publisher, broadcaster, or network, whatever your nomenclature is. All the same identifiers, all the same taxonomies, especially with CCPA, all the critical governance that's needed today. Same cube. We were the first, along with Condé Nast, we both in the same month in 2013 rolled out audience extensions for the first time. And, the ability to use third-party data to scale and say, hey, you really like people on our cooking videos. Well, unfortunately, we have a fixated amount of inventory there, but gee whiz, would you like to just find those people who have watched cooking videos and find them somewhere else for half price? Because we got 12X that. Sure, that worked. So that's an initial use of this. But it's being able to lock in some of the first party and make that middle more valuable. We use a bullseye slide when talking about audience extension where, in the behavior in the moment is the bullseye, low surface area, high point value. The white ring, the next outer ring is on-site audience extension, right? So they're still in our contacts, but they're not exactly where you wanted them in the auto section or whatever. And then the blue ring is they're on the interwebs. So, being able to do that in a much more sophisticated way is the concept of the 3x3 matrix, not just basic stuff like that. Same deals with all these. The CRM, boy, you want to talk about account-based management? We have plans later this year to do a whole ABM CDP deep dive for 10 hours and get into that whole world about how account-based management in the lead gen space in B2B is about to explode and kind of get reborn thanks to CDPs instead of what Paul and I and other older people remember with card stacks and all kinds of other insane methods of handling leads. We're going to be eating our own dog food and doing a lot of that with our own. We've cobbled together our own little CDP, patching it together with a few different systems right now. Renee Kajowski, the very nice person out there with McKenna who signed you in, also runs global team operations for us. And we got a neat little roadmap for our humble B2B practice. But yeah, all of these same dashboards as a publisher apply as well. the exact same testing and deploying. Stage 4 is the same. The email, it's amazing. There was last Christmas 2018. So it was exactly about a year ago today that there was a study came out post-Christmas the year before that said for the first time more people liked personalized emails and demanded those versus generic. So Land's End, easy example, would push the same email to 47 million people in the US before Christmas because, you know, sweaters aren't selling as much. So put this sweater at, you know, like the window, if you will. And more people, who tended to be younger, of course, said, why, you've known me 8 years, why are you pushing this sweater? Why don't you put the things that I care about on here instead of scroll or find and search? And like, you think I'm gonna go click in and shop just because I heard Land's End? Maybe, but come on, Amazon does this better than you. Like, I mean, so fortunately there's a benchmark, and it does tend to be with the kids today where they are a little bit more understandable and less afraid of how the game is played here. Yes, I'm gonna tell you a little about me because you're gonna give me a better personalized content and marketing experience. Same thing with publishers, content and email. Again, the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal that I get every single day, it's in the exact same order, the same time, instead of the stories that you've seen me click on and read for 15 years. Why not just sequence? I mean, okay, Trump's top, but then after that, a little better. I mean, it's just easy math. The click-through works all the time. Okay. And then optimizing, as Matt said, with with brands and agencies, there is a less of a rhythm in understanding optimization with publishers typically. Again, the editorial team is a little bit better in understanding, okay, these stories hit and let's do more of those, and getting that factory going has been better in the last 10 years. But the other departments are still kind of in their own world of quarterly eCPMs and not thinking about how they're selling their audience, because they still think the world is having what they call a direct business, which is really just an IO business, and then programmatic. When direct actually has IO and programmatic under it, but because those teams are still siloed, unfortunately, at too many places in Europe, US, and elsewhere, you still need to have those teams working off the same data pool to appreciate how to sell audiences properly. So some work to be done, but a path here. So this is a little bit of the checklist that Amit and the gang put together with his global pub ops team. I would say it's kind of our hidden checklist when we have first chats from our client strategy team, when they're having first discovery meetings, or when we're having lunch with good publishers and catching up and kind of asking a few of these directly or indirectly and realizing, wow, these guys are 100 years old and they're 1 out of 10 today. And there are a couple of people who get it, but boy, they just haven't had a lot of empowerment or ability, or maybe ammo, to justify getting more resources, more empowerment, more justification to eventually become a CDO, or eventually at least be one of the catalysts that helps the revenue return, and be a response to Safari and their ITP fund, where we found and recorded at Ad Exchanger, our publisher client, revenue was down 28% since Safari made that move. So I think a lot of folks see that in Safari and they go, wait, Chrome actually has a higher share. Holy crap. We have how long to figure that out? So those are a lot of boardroom chats right now, or frontline chats with the smart programmatic people at the publishers that get it. So there's a little checklist to take home. So with that, again, once you've at least got a few of these checks, you'll be ready for the folks at Adobe to take advantage of their platform. You want to swap now?
Yeah, sure.
Cool.
He's going to accept you back into the room.
Yep. So we will bring, Mike, I didn't ask you this in the prep. Do you remember the TV show Laverne and Shirley?
Yes.
Anybody ever call you the Big Ragu?
Yeah, wouldn't be the first time.
All right, I didn't think so. I didn't know how old you were. I thought, who's the Big Ragu? We get that sometimes. Huh?
Back to you.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
There we go.
So I don't think we got to everything in the demo, right? On the brand side?
Yeah, we have at least.
Obviously, it'll apply to the publisher side, but we've got some other publisher-focused stuff to jump to after that, right?
Yep.
Cool.
All right, so one of the components I want to just kind of tie off with the demo, just jump back. Yeah, so when we were walking through the CDP, the one last component that we didn't get to was the activation component, right? So we had that segment, and if I drill back, just make this a little bit bigger. So if we browse segments, we were looking at the loyalty travelers. And if we drill into that specific segment, we were looking at Kate's profile. We were seeing all the different attributes that were collected and stitched to that profile. But what we didn't do was actually send that segment out for activation. So when we talk about one of the major differences between Adobe Experience Platform and the real-time CDP, I mentioned earlier on that the real-time CDP, the best way to think about that and kind of draw the line in the sand versus that and AEP. AEP is kind of the back-end technology. If you remember, I was toggling back and forth between the real-time CDP dashboard, which we've been working in thus far, and the Experience Platform. When I did my own profile lookup, they're pretty much identical. They're using exactly the same back-end infrastructure. It's just the real-time CDP is kind of like that marketer/publisher friendly interface that allows you to kind of go through some of these workflows. It has some of those out-of-the-box connectors, but most importantly, with AEP, I could build or I can leverage APIs to send these segments out for destinations. Major difference here is with real-time CDP, these connections already exist, similar to the DMP. So in other words, if I was to start using Audience Manager DMP, we'd ask you, what are your, who are you sending segments to? Probably going to be DFP, SSPs, things of that nature from the publisher perspective, and we would just simply turn it on. It wouldn't require any customization, right? So with the real-time CDP, it's very similar to that. We've already got all these destinations established, so that all you would have to do is if you want to send a segment out for activation, you would just check some of these checkboxes and say, yeah, I want to send this out to Google, Facebook, Adobe Campaign for ESP. These are primarily people-based activation channels. Again, because they're predicated on email and phone number and things of that nature. Now, do we have ways of accessing these channels through the DMP? Sure, but there's going to be some cookie leakage there because we're using cookies pretty much, or hashed email addresses to access these different destinations. Whereas within CDP and AEP, we're storing email unhashed right there. So the match rate should be 1-to-1. So we're able to check some of these checkboxes, whether they're people-based or device-based activation channels. And then what we'd be able to do, just zoom back, there we go. Before we hit next, what you'll see in the right-hand column over here is this idea of an addressable audience. So when we think about match rate, that's exactly what the addressable audience is. It's great to know what size your segment is, but that doesn't mean a whole lot if you can't reach those users in the ultimate destination. So again, I'm asked if I want to have an end date, and I'm just going to skip over that, similar to what we did for the data source. But now, once I send these segments out to actual destination partners, I'm able to see kind of a flow chart here. I'm able to see what my total profile count is within my entire instance of Experience Platform / CDP. I'm able to see what the unique profiles are within that specific segment or segments that I'm sending out to my destinations. But then I'm also able to see what the match rate is between that segment and the destination itself. Any questions there? Did you have any other questions with destinations or workflow?
No, but I guess, what is the match rate? Because usually with most DMPs, they do percentages.
Yep. Yeah, I think there's another dashboard that I can follow up with some documentation that shows the actual percentage. I know Audience Manager does that from a DMP perspective, but I just got to drill in to find it in AEP.
And I guess from like the segment standpoint,
Yeah.
When you're creating it with first-party CRM, is it just based on that time period that you're pulling from, or is it auto refreshing so that any new records is coming through?
Yeah, so in this example where we ingested contacts from Microsoft Dynamics, then it would automatically pipe in new contacts as you're editing into the CRM. You wouldn't have to continually refresh. that source in order to get an updated list into the platform. And similarly with the destinations, if you sent this segment out for activation today, I come to the site tomorrow, I've now qualified for this segment, there would be no need to refresh this destination connection because it's all real time. I qualify for the segment in real time, and then that connection between us and the destination is maintained by Adobe and the partner in real time. Same thing with suppression too. So this isn't just segment qualification, but it's also segment disqualification. And if we've already clustered together multiple devices, you're not just suppressing the device I converted on, but you're suppressing all the connected devices that are clustered to me as well. Cool. All right, so. All right, so similar as Matt mentions, let me just do some presentation. There we go. I mean, for publishers, it's a slightly different lens, right? So it's all about understanding the users that are coming to the site and then digging in on insights as much as humanly possible to extract and really kind of hone in and get as granular as you can with those individual audiences so you can fetch a higher CPM. That's pretty much the name of the game, right? So improve profitability. When we're thinking about data collection specifically, one of the biggest things that we typically talk to publishers about is the audience size is a big deal, right? Because I mean, ultimately, if you only have a small subset of users to monetize, then you're going to hit a critical rate pretty fast, right? So when we're thinking about Adobe Analytics and Adobe CDP, such experience platform, those signals are streaming into the platform in real time. And it's a server-to-server connection. What I mean by that is if you were using a different analytics tool or a homegrown solution, and it was cookie-based for the most part, whereas remember, this is predicated on ECID and persistent identifiers, there's a match rate issue. You may be seeing 1 million users come to your site every day, but after the match rate's done with your CDP, you might only actually collect 700,000 of those actual users. But because Adobe Analytics and the Adobe CDP and Experience Platform are a server-to-server integration, all predicated on the same ID namespace, there's 100% match rate. There is no leakage there, right? So that's one of the biggest things for publishers is, okay, right now I'm losing users between being able to collect data and store data and make it actionable versus Adobe where I'm seeing a 1-to-1 ratio. The second piece of that is also being able to take that audience and then increase it, so lookalike modeling. But before I get into that piece, what you're seeing up here is just the Adobe homepage, looking at one of the audience solutions here, Audience Manager, and we just ran a quick debugger just to show some of the signals that are being captured right now on the Adobe homepage. Where's it at? Anyway, we have things like referring URL, Experience Cloud ID, which is that persistent identifier, time of day, any of the authentication events that we have stored about that user, as well as, one sec. Are we still sharing in the session? I think I have to reshare. Okay, good. Okay. Yeah, so as I mentioned, we're capturing things like that Experience Cloud Visitor ID, the referring URL, the actual page name for here it's Audience Manager, and all those signals are passed in real time into the CDP and being appended to the profile. So again, first part of this is not losing any data between analytics and your actual profile within the CDP. The second piece is actually extending that audience with modeling. So using things like lookalike modeling to find other users that resemble users that have taken a specific action. And the third piece is actually maintaining a strong presence when you send that segment out for activation, whether you're sending it to an ad server, the DFP, or you're sending it anywhere else for that matter. Having that server-to-server connection in place where you're maintaining a high match rate is pretty critical. Okay, so the next piece that I wanted to visit here was the actual data science component that we touched on a little bit earlier. But again, from a publisher perspective, one of the critical pieces here is really being able to do analysis on your audiences
to be able to figure out who these people are, exactly what actions have they taken, so that you can package them as granular as possible and you can fetch the highest CPM, as I mentioned. In this example, this is a travel and hospitality example. This is looking at, let's say you have a propensity score. And this is a travel and hospitality. Let's say we're looking at things like next best offer, or in this instance, next best destination. So let's say that we either built this model in CDP, or you already have a homegrown model that you've ingested into the CDP, or it's one of the pre-baked recipes that live within the CDP. What you're able to do here, and we talked about this again a little bit earlier, is the benefit of having this exist under the same hood as your marketing engine. If you're doing this data science external of your CDP or your marketing hub, what the data scientists or the insights team has to do is they've got to combine a bunch of data from different data sets. They have to unify that data, format that data, create a model, run the model, take the output of that model, and you still need to reintroduce it into a marketing system to make it actionable, right? So operationally inefficient and also takes a lot of time. The beauty of having the model live under the same hood as the marketing engine is, in this instance, if I come to a site, whether it's a mobile app or desktop, and now some of my different criteria and some of my signals are being passed into that experience data model, passed into the data set, you now have that actual machine learning model, whether it's written in Spark, Python, R, or anything in between, now processing my visit in real time and determining what the next best destination is. So you're able to tune the model, evaluate, and republish the model on the fly in the marketing channel instead of doing this stuff external. And in this example, what you'll see here is when determining the next best destination or the next best offer, again, let's just say this is a travel site, it's trying to determine keep it super simple, what hero image to serve me, you know? Now, if this model didn't have any logic behind it, it would say, oh, this user, Mike, is always doing searches for restaurants in New York. He's always looking at different, what to do, different nightlife, things of that nature. He must want to travel to New York, right? Logical conclusion. But then based on the additional rule-based logic behind the scenes, it would say, well, also exclude that if he lives there, right? So you'll see the highest score here is actually, well, New York at 87. But because I live in New York, I reside in New York, that's not my next best destination. The next best destination is actually Miami. So let's use that, and then it'll send that segment or that offer into the XDM, and that'll actually be the next best offer. So that's just an example of how kind of like data science and bringing these models into the platform and leveraging machine learning can not only operationalize some of these tasks a lot more efficiently, but also make it a lot easier for IT and data science to collaborate with marketing. I mentioned these a few times. So these are actually some of the pre-built models that live within AEP/CDP. These are going to become more and more extensive as the year goes on. So things like product purchase prediction and customer AI, and trying to ahead of time predict what the journey is going to be. We mentioned attribution earlier on, the recommendation wizard, combining those with offers. And it's just a little bit more of an extensive description of these. But what I really wanted to show you guys, I'm going to jump back out of the presentation and go back into demo mode for a moment. And if we think about those application services that we mentioned really early on, one of those being that box in the purple all the way to the right, the customer journey analytics, let's take a look at Adobe Analytics and how you would be able to glean some insights from here. So right now I'm in Adobe Analytics. This would be considered customer journey analytics. The first piece of this is if I go into analysis workspace, this example I'm using WebMD as a publisher. If I wanted to use some of this machine learning behind the scenes and look at something as simplistic as, let's say, anomaly detection, right? So in this example, that highlighted green line is the expected, if I can get it to persist, there we go. This is, we're thinking about allergy sufferers specifically, right? When they come to the site and they're clicking around on different conditions. This kind of light green shade around the lines themselves are the expected hits that WebMD would expect to see on any given basis, right? So what the anomaly detection here, powered by Sensei AI, is doing is it's looking for anomalies that appear outside of that expected green shade.
And in this example, we find one here where this anomaly is detected is 232% above what the typical site traffic for allergy sufferers. So what we'll do is we'll analyze that, and we'll run something called contribution analysis. And the contribution analysis is what's going to give us the actual signals that contributed to that anomaly. And I'll show you what I mean by that. If we scroll down here, we can see that, okay, well, there was a lot of people searching for allergies. That makes sense. That's pretty straightforward. But then maybe you have a campaign out that's specifically targeting allergy sufferers, maybe people that had allergy attacks, maybe they're part of a test group, so on and so forth. Point being, if I wanted to take all of the users that were part of this anomaly and then send it back into either the DMP or the CDP for further evaluation, I could do that here. I could simply just create a segment from that selected subset, and these are all the different attributes for those users, and I could pass this back into platform, DMP, CDP, do a lookalike model, run additional attribution analysis, send it out for audience extension, and or apply it to the device graphs, because remember that also the name of the game here is scale too for publishers, right? So especially with the co-op, if you have a group of 1 million folks or 1 million people or devices, and you want to extend that, Adobe Device Co-op is a pretty easy way to do that. So applying the device graph and then sending it out for activation. Any questions there?
So when you hit the advanced contribution, basically in that case, the analytics of Sensei, whatever it's called.
Yeah, so Sensei is not an add-on feature for Adobe at all. It's just kind of baked into a lot of our features in every solution. So in analytics, you'll see an example of Sensei being anomaly detection. In Audience Manager, an example of Sensei would be lookalike modeling or trait recommendation. In in Adobe Target, it's recommendations, right? And with an Experience Platform, it's some of those pre-built recipes that we were just looking at.
Because I don't have the subscription to the Experience, I don't see the anomaly detection being applied for Adobe.
It is dependent upon which subscription tier you have. Yes, of course. Any other questions?
So the last piece here that I wanted to show you just very quickly is if we cancel out of here and we jump back into Analysis Workspace. Also, what we're going to see if we go to some trends here. Typically within Adobe Analytics, if you weren't connecting this to the CDP or Audience Manager, you would just be seeing your own first-party analytics data based on hit-based users, right? But since we're now ingesting things like second-party data, third-party data, offline data, things of that nature, we're now able to see things like flow or path analysis, where if you have people that have converted, well, what else do I know about this user? What other touch points have they had? So for instance, this is a very high level example. Let's say that these allergy sufferers also happen to be golf enthusiasts. Oh, okay, well, maybe I can kind of pivot and introduce some of that into my audience for audience extension. And again, one of the interesting things here, especially when it comes to the DMP and audience marketplace, a lot of the evaluation of this third-party data is free to do because you're only paying for the third-party data if you're using it for targeting off-site or on-site personalization. So if you want to bring the third-party data into your ecosystem and just do some of this type of analysis, you can do that for free without having to pay the third-party data provider. You're only paying for it if and when you activate it. So if we scroll down a little bit more, we can see things like fallout. So during some of these journeys, where specifically were a lot of users falling out. And then also with the Venn diagram, I could say, well, if this user happens to fall in, if they've performed a natural search, again, for allergies, and they've also visited the homepage more than 2 times a week, and also they fall into this, Axiom third-party data bucket for allergy sufferers, and they're this tiny little subset of those 3. Let me take this subset and reactivate it just, again, by right-clicking and creating a segment, and then I can pass this segment, again, directly right back into Platform, CDP, or DMP. Cool. All right. Any other questions? I know the publisher section was a bit shorter as we spent a lot of time on the advertiser section.
Did you guys want to revisit anything or data governance or anything else?
Do you guys still have the same best practices used for DNPs like taxonomy and all that stuff?
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, when it comes to publisher taxonomy, I would say basically the same rules apply. I would just say that sometimes it's the organization of that taxonomy is a little bit different just because it's a lot more monetization focused instead of necessarily off-site targeting focused. So, I mean, it's typically a little bit more grouped per page and per BU and per product.
So if the metadata is dirty, it's not really good usage.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, the same rules apply for CDP and DMP and advertiser and publisher, whereas the use cases are only going to be as successful as the data that you're using to actually activate it. And that's why sometimes if you have a relatively low level of traffic, it's even more important to kind of use these different tools like the AI and the anomaly detection and those pre-built recipes to kind of extract as much value from those audiences and get as granular as you can with the recreation of those audiences so that you can package them up and sell them the most effective way possible.
This is what we call a leading question. So one of the things I'm proud of on the back of my, if I had a baseball card, it would say Matt was the first guy at a publisher to have the word programmatic in his job title. At the New York Times, one of the folks right after that was this guy. Because if you look at his LinkedIn, you'll see that he led programmatic for this little publisher called Yahoo back then. So you had the Kellogg's account.
Yes.
With our boy Jim Kinsella.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So let's say you and Jim are working today at Yahoo and Kellogg's. What do you wish you could have done then that you could do now?
Yeah, it's a good question, especially for Kellogg's. Their main KPIs are all brand focused, right? So nobody's going to go online and buy Pop-Tarts. Well, actually, maybe on Amazon you might.
Amazon, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Back then, you weren't really doing that. Yeah, so I mean, I think a lot of these back then, their major KPIs were, is this group in demo? Are they within range of the demographic that I'm trying to reach? So I think the analysis wasn't really there. I think the seamless activation wasn't really there because we were also, obviously, Yahoo being a publisher, we had tremendous access to O&O inventory that we have at Yahoo, but Kellogg's was also interested in going beyond that. So what about private marketplace with Match.com and private marketplace with Times or private marketplace with Meredith and all those guys. So those are all very much managed services where personally reaching out to each one of those
No, we did it
individual.
at the Times with them.
Yeah.
But he couldn't take any learnings from us and apply to you, and we couldn't take any learnings from there and apply.
And that's the whole second party database too,
exactly.
right? I mean, instead of having somebody kind of broker that relationship and rely on reporting from 6 different systems that were probably not connected in a way that you could really glean a lot of insights from, having all that data predicated on the same ID, flowing into the same system, looking at it under the same hood, and analyzing with AI, that wasn't really a thing back then.
So Yahoo also bought this company called Interclicks with a guy named Michael Katz, who's now CEO of mParticle. This also ran CDP.
Yeah.
So obviously back then, not everything was probably integrated the way it could have been.
Yeah.
And what the promise probably on the M&A slide was versus the reality of Yahoo plus Interclicks for Kellogg's.
Yeah.
That, right?
Yeah.
So same kind of question. Like, there are a lot of publishers like Meredith, Time, Viant. I mean, a lot of moves have been made to try and secure pools of first-party data as a publisher.
Yeah.
Again, Google, Facebook, and Amazon being the ultimate 3 in B2C. What can, how do you see the rise of second-party? And I've got a follow-up question about publisher co-ops. What do you see do you see this platform being a way to scale and find second-party quickly to be able to build the footprint better instead of kind of just taking flyers and stuff?
Yeah, I think it needs to be a lot more supply focused, like trying to analyze individual sites, analyze the traffic going to those sites, and does this have enough overlap with who I'm trying to target to make it beneficial, and then weighing that against the actual CPM of that inventory. Whereas now I think we've moved to a much more audience-centric view where it's like, I know who I want. Now, I don't care what publisher site they're on. I just want to find them. And as a publisher, It's really trying to understand who's coming to my site and making those audiences appeal to the broadest range of advertisers possible and have that pool of audience be as precise as possible.
So we've done 7 B2C publisher co-ops globally and 2 B2B. And so we've got a little experience and bias on this and seeing where they've succeeded partially and failed miserably.
Yeah.
Has this publisher platform even been pitched, let alone used yet, to be the next gen answer for that, so that whether it's David with Ozone Project in UK or other like the BBA or B2B old client who's built their own kind of hacked private exchange, can be able to share first party audience pools effectively.
Yeah, and then we discussed this a little bit earlier this week, right? Where I think similar to the DMP, it was very much adopted primarily, at least upfront, by advertisers and brands and agencies, right? And I think we started to see publishers start to adopt it a little bit later on. I think we're seeing the similar trends now with the CDP, whereas a lot of the initial interest is with the marketer and the brand and the agency, whereas publishers are still a little bit. So there's a lot more interest, at least up front from the Adobe side, that we're seeing with publishers and experience platform, just because there's the wide options there that go beyond just kind of activation and reconciliation of offline and known and unknown users. But there's also that untapped potential for the whole data science component, which I think a lot of people are if they are doing it, it just requires so many hours and so much manpower behind the scenes to do all those steps that I was just describing, that it's an arduous task, that now they can operationalize all this stuff under their marketing hood, and having that holistic customer profile of both the anonymous and known users is pretty much something they haven't had access to before. So I would say I would definitely think there's gonna be more publisher interest over the course of the next couple of years, but especially for Adobe, since this is a relatively new offering, this application service, that we're gonna start to see some more of that adoption.
Cool.
Yeah.
How are you, or can you, with the CDP data and offline conversion data, be it sales, revenue, or just leads, account open, tie that back into like an assisted attribution model, or instead of the last touch attribution, be able to see that or multiple channel kind of impact that it has. Can you with the known data?
Yeah, so it comes into the customer journey analytics. So I guess it depends on what you're bringing to the platform and exactly where that transaction is happening. If it's happening online, it's happening in your analytics tool, that's easy enough to have that conversion event captured and appended to the profile. If it's happening offline, that works too, as long as there's some sort of POS terminal or some sort of entry point or gateway that's able to record that transaction and then send it via API in real time to hit that profile. And then I think along with that, you probably want some sort of media engagement metrics to say, okay, well, were there any particularly impactful video advertisements or display advertisements, or was a specific search keyword working particularly well for this specific brand, and then being able to mesh all that together. And that's really within Adobe Analytics, having kind of that free-form drag and drop ability to kind of analyze all those different dimensions against one another, that you can really get more of a holistic understanding of what's going on there between offline and online media and search. Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Yep. Yeah, so 100%. So Adobe Target, obviously the Adobe personalization engine, if we were to toggle and go to Adobe Target, and if I wanted to set up just a really quick and easy, see there's also recommendations there too, but if I wanted to create a really simple workflow, create an activity, again, just do something really easy like an A/B test. Yeah, let's do this little box, let's move that guy. If we want to do an A/B test with a specific audience, we could load this, we could look at all the different content, we can pick and choose which content that we want to basically make dynamic based on the audience. And then we'd hit next.
And then what you're able to do is say, well, do I want this test to include all visitors, or do I want to use this very specific audience? In that example we just had with allergy sufferers, let's pick that audience and hit done. And then what you're able to do is essentially split that audience to have one experience or another. And you could have Target using Sensei automatically reallocate the traffic to one experience or another, depending on the performance of that actual experience. So yeah, 100%. I mean, this all goes hand in hand with suppression and all the media use cases, along with the analysis and using some of those recipes. But yeah, the personalization is very impactful in terms of using those segments to dictate, what experience they're going to have in real time. And it's also not what experience they're going to have the next time they come to the site, but if they're on the site now and I already know they've been in the store and purchased, various SKUs, and I know this about them from an offline metric that you've ingested, then you should be able to personalize that now upon first visit. And then as they click around and do additional things on the site, then when they go to the very next page, having that dynamically populated based on those attributes.
How much of this is contingent on me using AEM as content management?
I would say none. Yeah, AEM, of course, as I mentioned before, there's some really good interoperability when staying within the Adobe ecosystem. But I think at this point, everybody has to be agnostic. So, I mean, whether the data is coming from your own DAM or from an outside tool altogether, that's totally fine. I mean, it's just getting the images, having access to tap into those images, and that repository is all it's needed, because it's blending the data with those images to fuel this experience with the audience.
Oh, so this is delivered by, is actual information profile available via like an API or?
Yeah, so if you wanted to retrieve any or all of the attributes that we saw in that profile earlier, then that could be, everything's API. Yep. Yeah, but I mean, whether you're using AEM or any other tool, it's, again, there's gonna be some advantages, but for the most part, I mean, it's just rendering an image from a source. But then you're using, this is the experimentation logic behind the scenes. So again, when I come to a specific page as a user, the code on the page is calling Adobe, whether it's platform or CDP or AAM, and returning the segment qualification and my attributes. And then based on the experiment that you set up here, then it dictates which experience I'm going to see. There was that other section that I didn't go into, which is recommendations, which is kind of similar to offers, where it's going to basically look at all the data I have available in my profile and all the different images I have available in my repository and all the different offers and text that can go along with those images, and then kind of bringing those all together and using the logic behind the scenes or using Sensei to give the best image at the right time. Yep. I'm sorry, behind the wall, couldn't see.
So with the allergy sufferers example, just trying to think of the use case for us, like if we were trying to target, or let's say TDA or E-Trade came to us with a campaign of having a goal open new accounts with, a low like cost per, wanting to target people to open, brokerage accounts that were interested in ETF investing.
Sure.
Would we be able to set up like a data set to, somehow maybe target people who didn't already hold accounts at, TDA or the brokerage?
Yep.
Wherever the brokerage was, and, to target people specifically who didn't have accounts yet, and, let's say you were at the capacity to invest in ETFs.
Yep.
For example.
Yep. Yeah, I work with FSI a lot. I'd say that's one of the very common use cases, right? So you want to take users, to your point, you want to suppress the users that are in your current customer base, or if you're doing an upsell use case, target the users that are in your current customer base, but maybe you want to sell them on a different ETF, right?
Product, yeah.
Exactly, right. Or maybe it's a different mutual fund or something to that effect. But yeah, I would take any of that data that you already have about that user, maybe even blend in third-party data. Let's say you're missing household income or something to that effect, to gauge from the DMP, or if you have a direct relationship like a Dun & Bradstreet, having that data set directly linked into platform, having that own individual kind of private data feed, and then introducing those propensity scores. To your point, just because they have a specific household income and they've got they visited the site once or twice before, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're a good candidate for ETF. And you have lots of different ETFs that are targeted towards different types of individuals. And if they already have a couple of brands and already have a footprint with TD or E-Trade or whatever the case may be, then that might give them a higher propensity to purchase that specific product that you're looking to sell. So yeah, I would definitely say that, yeah, bringing in the data you already have about that user, joining it with any second or third party data in terms of like household income and more of that ubiquitous information, and then suppressing anything like current customer, if that's what you're looking to exclude, and then using that for personalization, offsite targeting, and then having all that come together in real time is a component here too, because once somebody converts or once somebody's hit their frequency cap, think about all the media dollars that you've wasted between now and then. If it takes 24 hours to update that information or 48 hours against your entire customer base, that's a ton of wasted media. So having all this information updated in the profile is kind of why we went through this huge, extensive exercise of building this homegrown solution where we're unifying all these different edge environments so that we're accessing profiles in milliseconds instead of hours.
Mic drop. Cool. Pun intended. Good. Good stuff. One more round of applause for Mike. Thank you. We're right on track, folks. So what I want to propose is we actually hang on to the break between the breakout sessions and the future and fireside chat, and we start the breakout sessions now. So and condense maybe by 5 minutes or so here or there. So here's the goal. Going to complete first time we've done this, obviously, with CDP University, and we've done it a few times in the training, and depending on the room and the mood and the time, the day, and the topics and the culture and everything else, you know, we'll see how these go. So complete. If this is meh, then we'll gather quickly and we'll save time. But we'd like to get into your worlds individually a little bit more on this. So we've got 4 breakout sessions that I'll pull up here. The goal is to, we've all been in breakout sessions with offsites and training and stuff like that. And when it goes too long, you're staring at each other and it's awkward and you're looking, yeah, we've all been there. So 15 minutes, we're going to do the breakout. That's it. Tight, you know, everybody chat for a few, conversation, and get out of Dodge, and let's come back, share with the class for 10 minutes, and then that's it. Cool? That's the mix. This isn't an hour. So we've got 4 topics that we threw out, and we are open to others, but of course, that would be what I need. Where did it go? There it is. Thank you, Mike. So Matt Greitzer, our guest, is going to be hosting the e-commerce and or subscription for publishers or brands, offline and online data challenges. He can sit right there. So we're going to gather some chairs, front left corner, you know, and love Matt Greitzer right there. So he's going to be starting there. And where is our display? Sorry, one sec. Won't be too hard to remember, but there we go. Erin Yazgar, who I think is in the back of the room, she's going to be handling something near and dear to her heart, where she helps a lot of folks out with our clients in org and data silo, either the talent or the targets. And we've got those in different sizes, and how do we deal with that and some practical know-how there. The idea is to kind of do a little speed date consulting, or a little, you know, the doctor's in Peanuts reference, if you remember, 5 cents, come to the booth kind of thing. Drive-by type stuff. Amit Shah is going to be over here, please, opposite end, handling A&M, near and dear to his heart. Feel free, if you get bored, to ask him about his ComScore experience when he was there years ago, and what he thinks of what's going on over there these days. But he is a teaser, and probably no surprise, as one of our leaders and someone who has been working on A&M for programmatic out of home in the entire industry, and for now all media channels. We're going to be rolling out some A&M humble services to help everybody around the ANA measurement conference in a couple of months. So kind of near and dear to his heart, and can help over there. I'll be off in the back talking creative for anybody who wants to remember about the messaging part. For anyone who, again, as a publisher, think content, or think about your email creative, and then for brands, obviously, your paid creative. And let's divide and conquer. So Erin and I are going to be at 2 tables in the on the other side, out by the, if you choose us, you also get first access to the sugar and the snacks for the break. And then we're gonna have Matt and Amit here. We will see you at 10 after, right back in this room, to share our learnings. Thanks.